You slowly open your eyes, still drowsy, feeling the soft scent of clean linen and melted wax from the candles around you. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but your day has already begun. You're lying in the royal bed at the Palace of Versailles, surrounded by thick velvet curtains and fine silk sheets that feel like clouds beneath your fingers. But you're not alone. Around you, a small crowd has gathered. Chamberlains, pages, valets, and even high-ranking nobles, all standing quietly. Some discreetly curious, others maintaining formal composure. This is le lever du roi, the king's rising. This isn't just a morning routine, it's a performance. A ritual carefully orchestrated where every gesture carries meaning, and every position in the room reveals social status. And you, of course, are the main act. The first valet of the chamber enters first, quietly announcing the hour and the weather. He doesn't say it outright, but he's basically the royal weatherman. Majesty, it is 7 hours and 23 minutes, past midnight, and the sky is partially cloudy, much like your schedule. Then comes the Grand Chamberlain, bringing with him a silver basin filled with warm water scented with rose oil. You dip your hands into the water slowly, feeling the warmth and the delicate fragrance. Every movement is watched, every expression analyzed. Nothing is private. Nothing is casual. Next arrives the great equerry, carrying your shirt warmed near the fire. As you slip it on, you feel the smooth fabric brush against your skin. Simple enough, but performed with such pomp that it feels almost sacred. And again, who performs the gesture matters as much as the gesture itself. This is just one of many moments during the day where hierarchy manifests physically. Historians still debate whether these rituals were mechanisms of political control or simply traditions maintained by inertia. Some believe Louis XIV used these ceremonies to keep nobles occupied with symbolic duties, preventing them from conspiring. Others suggest it was a way to remind everyone, and perhaps even himself, that he was more than human. He was the very embodiment of the sun. And don't think this competition for proximity to the king was a joke. Nobles traveled miles, spent fortunes, and even begged for favors just to secure a privileged spot at the lever. Who helped the king put on his right sock could brag about it for weeks. Someone who held the towel during the bath? That person was practically promoted to elite status. As you finish dressing, the audience grows. Those who weren't chosen to participate directly hover nearby, hoping for a glance, a smile, a nod. Even breakfast will be served in front of witnesses, because everything in Louis XIV's life had to be seen, celebrated, and above all remembered. You might think this all sounds absurd, almost ridiculous, but for the Sun King, this was balance, the perfect mix of power and ceremony. It wasn't just about getting dressed or having breakfast. It was about affirming, from the very first minute of the day, that he was the center of the French universe, and this was only the beginning of the day. You finish dressing, and the morning ritual is far from over. The lever was only the beginning. Now it's time for one of the most important parts of the day, breakfast. But don't expect anything as simple as toast and jam. Here in Versailles, breakfast is a political event disguised as a meal, full of formality, hierarchy, and dishes so elaborate they look like they've stepped straight out of an art exhibit. The room reserved for this morning ritual is decorated with gilded mirrors and heavy velvet curtains, illuminated by chandeliers casting flickering shadows on the walls. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the strong perfume of servants and nobles already positioned in their places, waiting for you with reverence. It's like walking into a theater where everyone knows their role, except you. The great cook of the court personally supervises the arrival of the dishes, making sure everything is perfect. Today, among the highlights are almond pudding with wild honey, thin slices of ham cured in royal vinegar, herb-scented breads, and fruits brought from distant lands. Some so exotic that historians still debate whether they were actually edible. or just used for decoration. But don't think you'll be eating alone. A small group of special guests has permission to stay, chosen carefully. Among them are members of the royal family, close ministers, and sometimes even foreign visitors whose countries interest Louis XIV. Sharing a meal together was a subtle way of showing power, but also of negotiating alliances under the guise of politeness and hospitality. A curious detail: even within this controlled environment, there were strict rules about who could touch the food before the king. Some dishes were tasted by specific servants, not necessarily out of fear of poisoning, though that had happened in history, but more as a matter of status. Being allowed to taste first was seen as a privilege, not just a precaution. As you sit at the richly decorated table covered in golden cutlery and embroidered napkins, you notice that every move you make is observed. Even the way you hold your spoon or cut your bread can be interpreted as a sign of mood, disposition, or disapproval. A stifled yawn might be seen as disinterest in an important topic discussed minutes earlier. A smile directed at someone in particular, it could mean political approval or even romantic favoritism. And don't think the conversations are light. While you chew slowly, you hear discussions about taxes, treaties, looming wars, and palace intrigues. Breakfast is the first moment of the day where real decisions begin to take shape. Only here, instead of maps and documents, there are forks and glasses of wine. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV actually ate as much as his records suggest, or if much of the food was discreetly removed untouched after being presented. There's evidence that many dishes were taken away almost untouched, replaced with identical copies to maintain the appearance of abundance. As you finish your cup of tea scented with orange blossom, a page enters with a tray of delicate sweets, made with sugar imported from the West Indies, a luxury extremely expensive at the time. You choose one, chewing it slowly, tasting the sweet flavor dissolve on your tongue. It's a brief moment of peace, surrounded by watching eyes. And so, ends the royal breakfast, not as a moment of rest, but as another step in the game of power, etiquette, and absolute control. Now that breakfast is over and you've officially been seen eating by part of the court, it's time for another ceremony that mixes hygiene and hierarchy, your morning bath. But don't expect a quiet moment alone. Not here, in Versalhes. In this world where even breathing is a political act, washing yourself is a public performance full of rituals and meaning. You walk through the golden corridor of the palace, accompanied by a small procession of servants and chosen nobles. Some carry embroidered towels, others bring bottles of imported essences, and there's even someone holding the basin as if it were a sacred relic. The royal bathroom isn't a private room like we know today. It's a large chamber decorated with white marble and Venetian mirrors, prepared to receive visitors and show off power, even during a moment of hygiene. When you enter, you already find the preparations complete. The wooden tub lined with copper is filled with warm water perfumed with lavender and sandalwood oils. Rose petals float on the surface, giving the environment an almost magical air. A servant adjusts the temperature carefully while another pours a special mix of herbs believed to purify the skin and strengthen the spirit. Yes, that was considered important for health, or at least so they believed back then. You begin to undress slowly, without rushing, because every movement is observed. A page takes your shirt reverently, as if receiving a historical relic. Another approaches with a natural sponge dipped in aromatic water and starts gently scrubbing your back. A third holds the towel, ready to dry you as soon as you're done. And in the middle of all this, there's a nobleman with an official title whose only duty at this moment is to ensure the water stays at the perfect temperature. Here's a curious fact. Many of the most prestigious titles in the court were awarded based on functions related to the king's body. Whoever could help Louis XIV wash or hold the basin during his bath had elevated status, almost like being invited to the most exclusive dinner in the world. Some of these roles were inherited by entire families, passed down from generation to generation, as if they were medals of honor. Historians still debate whether this physical proximity to the king was only symbolic or if it carried deeper meanings. Some suggest that the constant exposure of the royal body was a way to affirm that he was superior, immune to what would normally be considered privacy. Others argue that, in truth, it was a way to control nobles, keeping them occupied with seemingly trivial tasks but politically significant ones. As you clean yourself slowly, feeling the warm water relax your muscles, you realize this routine is about more than appearance. It's also a declaration of absolute control over time, space, and the people around you. Every detail is planned, every gesture part of a greater game. When you step out of the tub, you're wrapped in a towel so large it looks like a royal flag. They dry you carefully, as if treating an ancient masterpiece. Then perfumed oil is applied to your arms and legs, and you put on a light, fresh, delicately embroidered shirt. You're ready for the next stage of the day, but before that, you take one last look in the gilded mirror in the room. Your eyes meet those of the people present. There's respect, admiration, perhaps even envy, and you smile discreetly, knowing that even in the act of bathing, you are the center of the universe. You're dry, perfumed, and wearing a light shirt, but the real dressing ritual has yet to begin. After all, in Versailles, putting on clothes isn't something you do alone. It's a spectacle full of meaning, silent rivalries, and clearly defined hierarchies. Each piece you wear is part of a demonstration of absolute power, and who gets to help with that process carries a title more valuable than gold. The room reserved for this ceremony is lit by tall candles and decorated with golden mirrors that reflect the pomp of the occasion. A select group of servants and nobles is already positioned around the royal bed, where the pieces of today's outfit are carefully laid out, chosen with care by royal tailors and embroidered by hand by talented artisans. There are long coats with silk details, tight breeches made of fine fabric, silk stockings imported from Italy, and custom-made boots. Each element tells a story: wealth, power, control. The grand dresser enters first, holding a richly embroidered robe. He makes a small bow before approaching and offers the piece with a solemn gesture, as if handing over a sacred relic. You raise your arms slowly, and he slides the fabric over your shoulders with almost surgical precision. It's a simple moment, yet filled with symbolism. This is the first formal step in assuming the role of king for the rest of the day. Soon after, the royal butler arrives, bringing the cravat, not just an accessory, but a work of art. Made with Belgian lace and adorned with tiny pearls, it's gently wrapped around your neck by experienced hands. As this happens, you feel the soft scent of the freshly ironed linen mixing with the strong perfume of the servants nearby. Then comes the most competitive moment, the putting on of the waistcoat. This is one of those moments where rivalry among nobles reaches its peak. Who has permission to dress the king in this specific piece gains prestige and even political influence. Some historians suggest that Louis XIV intentionally kept these competitions going, using them as a way to keep high-ranking lords occupied with trivial matters, preventing them from uniting against him. Here's a little-known curiosity. There were days when the king wore a waistcoat so heavily decorated with diamonds and gold that it required the help of 2 servants to adjust it properly. And still, he wore it like it was natural, as if carrying kilograms of jewelry throughout the entire day was just part of the routine. As you finish dressing, you notice that every movement of yours is observed. The way you adjust a sleeve or touch your collar can be interpreted as a sign of approval or dissatisfaction. Even the choice of hat for the day was considered a political gesture. Sometimes Louis XIV chose a more discreet model to show moderation. Other times, he picked a hat covered in colorful feathers to assert his grandeur. Historians still debate whether the king actually enjoyed all this theater or saw it as a tiring obligation. Records suggest that in private, Louis XIV sometimes complained about the lack of privacy and the constant pressure of always being on display. But publicly, he never showed fatigue. Quite the contrary, he seemed to dominate each second with unwavering confidence. When the last button is fastened and the final ribbon is adjusted, you take a step back and look at yourself in the mirror. You're impeccable. Every detail matches perfectly, each color carefully chosen to convey authority and elegance. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the fabric and the responsibility you carry. Today, like every day, you are more than a man. You are the sun incarnate. You're dressed to perfection, but now comes a part of the day no one really enjoys facing, the royal medical visit. Today isn't just any day. You woke up with a slight discomfort, maybe a passing cold. Or could it be something more serious? It doesn't matter. In the world of Louis XIV, even a simple sniffle becomes a formal event, filled with mystery and treatments as strange as they are creative. The royal physician enters the room with quiet steps, almost as if he feared disturbing the cosmic balance of the court. He carries a small wooden chest with copper clasps, filled with bottles of various colors and Latin-labeled vials. His face is calm, but there's a flicker of nervousness in his eyes. After all, caring for the health of the Sun King isn't a task for the faint of heart. He bows deeply before approaching and, in a calm and respectful voice, begins asking discreet questions about your symptoms. How was your sleep, Majesty? Did you feel any chest pain? Was there any change in appetite? Each of your answers is noted by a scribe standing right behind him, as if every detail were part of an important historical document. After the initial conversation, he asks permission to examine you, something that can only be done by a few chosen ones. You nod briefly, and he begins with a visual exam, analyzing your color, posture, and facial expression. Then he requests that you stick out your tongue, observing it closely while murmuring things like, "Interesting. Yes, this confirms my initial suspicions." Now comes the most peculiar moment, the diagnosis based on urine. A page appears with a crystal jar containing your morning sample, and the physician lifts it to the candlelight, examining its color and clarity with the concentration of a medieval alchemist. It's slightly cloudy, sire, which indicates possible humoral imbalance, he says, as if he had uncovered a universal truth. Here's a curious historical fact. At the time, it was believed that health was governed by the four bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The physician's goal was to keep this balance, and for that, they resorted to bizarre methods by today's standards, such as bloodletting, purging, and even vinegar baths. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV truly trusted these treatments or used them only out of tradition. There are records that on one occasion he preferred an herbal infusion prepared by a local healer rather than follow the official physician's recommendations, which caused great scandal among the academics of the time. But don't think everything was based on superstition. Some of the remedies used were surprisingly advanced for the era. There were salves made from medicinal plants, soothing syrups made with honey and aromatic roots, and even lotions specifically designed to treat minor inflammations. But there were also questionable recipes, like drinking boiled rainwater mixed with coarse salt or applying a paste of horse dung to the temples to relieve migraines. As you take the first sip of the prescribed remedy, a thick, bitter mixture of unknown herbs, the physician waits anxiously for your reaction. You make an effort not to show disgust, maintaining royal composure. After all, the king doesn't complain about food, not even when it seems to have been cooked in a magical swamp. After a few minutes, the physician exits with another solemn bow, leaving you alone for a brief moment. It's a rare moment of silence, interrupted only by the crackling of the candles and the distant sound of voices outside. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of the title and the lingering taste of the medicine. And although your body still feels a little tired, your mind already knows. The day continues, and there's much more ahead. You're recovering from the bitter medicine and still feeling a bit sluggish, but there's no time to rest. In Versailles, even moments of leisure are part of the royal routine. And today, between ceremonies and official duties, there's space for something unexpected. A board game in the French court. The room set aside for this moment is simpler than the others, though it still maintains the palace's luxurious charm. The walls are decorated with fine tapestries, and a polished mahogany table occupies the center of the room. On it sits an intricately designed game board surrounded by pieces carved from ivory and gold. This isn't the kind of game you play alone. It's a mix of strategy, diplomacy, and sometimes a touch of political intrigue disguised as fun. Some of your closest guests are already seated, waiting for your arrival. Among them are members of the royal family, trusted ministers, and even a few nobles whose favor you're trying to measure. Today's chosen game is Le Jeu du Cavalier, the Knight's Game, an elegant variation of medieval chess where each piece represents a symbolic figure of society. King, queen, bishop, knight, and even the traitor, who may only be revealed at the end. You sit at the head of the table, and a page immediately brings you a goblet of lightly sweetened wine, offering it with reverence. The red liquid catches the candlelight as you take your first sip, preparing yourself mentally for the challenge ahead. Games at court were much more than pastimes. They were subtle tools of evaluation. Louis XIV used these matches to observe how his companions made decisions under pressure, judging who was patient, who took too many risks, and who knew when to wait for the right moment. And sometimes even the way someone moved a piece could reveal more about their intentions than any direct conversation. Here's a historical curiosity. There were certain games exclusive to the French court that mixed logic and political symbolism. One of them, called Le Jeu de l'Oie, the game of the goose, was especially popular among the nobility. In it, players advanced across numbered spaces on a board, facing obstacles and variable luck. Each space had a different meaning. Some represented alliances, others betrayals, and one, the prison space, forced the player to lose a turn, serving as a gentle reminder that power could be as fragile as a rolled die. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV truly enjoyed these games or mainly used them as a way to keep nobles occupied and predictable. Records suggest he often won, not necessarily because of superior skill, but because he learned to read his opponents better than any board. As you make your first move, advancing the knight diagonally, you notice the looks around you. Some players seem tense, others pretend indifference. A nearby noble smiles discreetly, perhaps planning a bold move. You return the look without showing emotion. The game starts slowly, but soon picks up pace. Each move is thought through carefully, each decision weighed. And so, between moving pieces and secrets lingering in the air, you dive into this world of strategy and symbolism, where winning isn't just about luck, but about knowing who's on your side and who might be sneaking up behind your back. The game ends, and you win, as always. But before you can truly relax, a new ceremony approaches: the royal lunch. This isn't a moment for rest or casual conversation. It's another step in the daily ritual of power, hierarchy, and absolute control. Each dish served, each seat at the table, each gesture during the meal has its place defined by centuries of tradition. You walk through the golden corridor to the main hall of the palace, where a long table richly decorated already awaits you. Tall candles cast dancing shadows on the walls lined with fresh tapestries, and servants in neat rows wait silently for your arrival. The soft scent of cut flowers mixes with the almost imperceptible smell of melted wax and fine fabrics covering the chairs. As you enter, everyone bows simultaneously, a wave of silent respect spreading across the room. It's time to take your place at the head of the table, strategically positioned so no one stands behind you. Louis XIV knew very well that even in seemingly simple moments, it was essential to maintain total control of the environment. Before you sit, the Grand Butler officially announces the start of lunch. A page pulls your chair carefully, while another discreetly adjusts the gold-threaded napkin. You settle down slowly, watching the chosen guests take their places. There's no random seating here. Every position at the table reveals the social and political status of those present. A widely known historical fact is that Louis XIV ate alone, or almost. Although surrounded by hundreds of people during his meals, he only shared the table with a small selected group. Among them were members of the royal family, close ministers, and sometimes illustrious visitors whose country interested France. It was a subtle way of showing favoritism, or reminding others that not everyone was equally important. Today, among the guests, is the Duke of Orléans, your direct cousin and a central figure at court. He keeps a neutral expression, but you know he's watching closely, especially who was chosen to sit near you. There's also an Italian ambassador whose presence indicates an attempt to strengthen diplomatic ties with her home country. She smiles subtly when your eyes meet, but maintains composure. Meanwhile, the servants begin serving the dishes, moving like part of a perfectly rehearsed choreography. First come the appetizers, thin slices of ham cured in royal vinegar, herb-scented, breads baked with rare spices, and delicate sauces made with ingredients brought from distant regions. Each item first passes through the hands of the grand purveyor, responsible for ensuring everything is perfect before reaching the king's table. Here's a curious eccentricity of the era. There were certain foods considered only for the king. One of them was pâté de foie gras, a delicacy so exclusive that its consumption was forbidden to anyone outside the royal family. In addition, some dishes were served in a specific order, following a symbolic pattern. Appetizers represented humility, main courses demonstrated power, and desserts were seen as a reward for enduring formality until that point. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV actually ate as much as the records suggest, or if much of the food was discreetly removed untouched after the ceremony. There are indications that many dishes were quietly taken to other parts of the palace after being presented, especially the most expensive ones, such as exotic fruits from the West Indies. Some say the king preferred repeating popular dishes, while others believe he used lunch as a way to test the loyalty of his guests. Whoever praised the food too much was probably trying to gain political points. As you cut into the main course, a roasted venison seasoned with imported spices. You notice that even the way you hold your fork is observed. Your gestures are studied, your expressions analyzed. A slight nod may mean approval, a tired sigh, dissatisfaction. Nothing is casual, and so, between slow bites, polite conversations, and evaluating looks, the royal lunch continues. Another ceremony dressed as a meal, another moment where even chewing is part of the game of power. Lunch is over, and you rise from the table with the elegance of someone born into it. But there's no time to rest. Soon after the meal comes one of the most charming and demanding traditions of the French court: formal dancing. And today, among the events of the day, it's time for a performance of La Danse Noble, where every step is part of a ritual as old as the kingdom itself. You walk to the main hall, where the space is already being prepared. The high ceiling seems to hold the sky itself, decorated with paintings showing Greek myths and royal conquests. Gilded mirrors reflect the light of hundreds of candles, and the wooden floor shines as if wet. Musicians tune their instruments in silence, while servants adjust the chairs for the guests who are already beginning to arrive. Today's event has a special touch. It will be a demonstration of La Danse Noble, the noble dance, where elegance of movement is as important as the music itself. This practice was more than simple leisure. It was a way to show power, grace, and absolute control over body and space. Each gesture was studied, each position symbolic. You enter the hall to the sound of soft violins and harps. Everyone bows. In unison as you arrive, and a small group of chosen nobles is already positioned, waiting for your presence to begin. Today, the dance won't just be observed. It will be led by you. Here's a historical curiosity. Louis XIV loved to dance. As much as he loved being seen dancing, in his youth, he even participated personally in performances at court, including complex choreographed pieces. In one famous occasion, he portrayed the sun in a performance called Le Ballet de la Nuit, thus solidifying his title as the Sun King. They say he had an incredible memory for dance steps, and that he never stumbled, not even when wearing boots with extremely high heels. Historians still debate whether these performances were true artistic expressions or merely tools of political propaganda. Some believe Louis XIV used dance as a way to remind the court that he was the center of everything, even the rhythm of the music. Others suggest he truly enjoyed it, seeing art as a natural extension of absolute power. You take your first steps, feeling the fine fabric of your clothes move with you. Your feet find the rhythm of the music almost automatically, something taught since childhood, repeated so many times it became part of your identity. You make a slight bow, and your dance partner, a graceful young duchess, responds with a discreet smile before following the agreed movement. Around you, other pairs join the dance, spreading across the hall like raindrops on a smooth surface. It's a precise, almost mathematical choreography where everyone knows exactly where they should be and when. There's no improvisation here. Everything is planned. Each rotation, each pause, each exchanged glance. Then comes a particularly complex moment, the jeté en avant, a quick step requiring balance and strength. You execute it perfectly as always, but you notice one of the young noblemen hesitates, nearly stumbling. He quickly regains his posture, but you catch the flush on his face. A small mistake, almost imperceptible. But in Versailles, even that can be remembered for weeks. The music grows more intense and the movements follow suit. Feet strike the floor in unison, arms rise like branches swaying in the wind. The entire hall seems to breathe together, as if all present were part of a single machine of elegance and protocol. When the final note echoes and fades into the air, you make a final bow, followed by discreet, polite applause. The audience, though accustomed to such spectacle, still seems enchanted. And for a moment, you feel your heart race, not from fatigue but from victory. Another ceremony completed, another step in the game of power. And once again, you danced as if the world depended on it. The music still echoes in your ears, and the hall seems to vibrate with the energy of the performance. But now it's time to return inside the palace, not for rest, but for one of the most delicate and important tasks of the day: writing royal letters. This is not a casual moment of personal correspondence. It's a ceremony meticulously orchestrated, where every word written carries political weight, and every signature is a statement of authority. You walk through gilded corridors, lit by chandeliers, passing ancient portraits and tapestries that tell stories of conquests and alliances. Your steps are firm, almost silent on the polished marble floor. A small group of scribes and advisors is already positioned in the royal study, ready to begin. The room reserved for this ceremony is decorated with bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, hand-drawn maps, and a large desk made of polished mahogany. Upon it rests high-quality paper imported from Italy. Crystal inkwells hold black and red liquid, and quills are carefully arranged like surgical instruments prepared for use. You sit at the head of the desk, and a page immediately adjusts your chair, ensuring you're comfortable. One of the more experienced scribes approaches with a neatly stacked pile of documents and begins reading the topics of the day. a formal letter to the King of Spain, responding to concerns about territorial borders. A second message to the Pope, requesting spiritual support for new churches under construction. A third addressed to the colonial governor in the West Indies regarding reports of rebellion. You make a brief gesture indicating you're ready to begin. The scribe starts reading a model letter based on points previously discussed by your ministers. As he speaks, you listen carefully, interrupting only when necessary to adjust tone or add specific details. The language must be clear, firm, but always diplomatic. After all, even a letter can start a war or seal a lasting peace. Here's a little-known historical curiosity. Louis XIV was famous for his elegant and precise handwriting. They say he wrote part of the letters himself, especially those addressed to close contacts or people with whom he wanted to create a more direct connection. Rumors circulated at court that he used a special mix of ink with gold dust to highlight certain keywords, a subtle way of reminding the recipient that they were dealing with the Sun King. Historians still debate whether all the letters attributed to Louis XIV were actually written by him, or if much of them were produced by trained scribes imitating his style. There is evidence that the king personally reviewed each important document before signing, but there were also occasions when he delegated the entire writing process to trusted advisors. As you dip the quill into the inkwell and begin signing the first letter, you feel the symbolic weight of the gesture. Each stroke is a mark of power, a promise of action, an echo of your imperial will. You finish with a smooth motion and lift your eyes, waiting for the next. The process repeats several times, with letters being written, revised, and sealed with the royal seal. Some are short and direct, others are long and elaborate, with entire pages dedicated to justifying political decisions or expressing gratitude to allies. When the final letter is completed, a page carefully collects it and takes it away to be sealed and sent. The royal post is fast and efficient. Mounted messengers leave still that night, carrying words that will travel hundreds of miles, crossing borders and influencing destinies. You take a deep breath, feeling the smell of fresh ink and the gentle warmth of the candles around you. This was yet another seemingly simple moment that, in reality, had a huge impact. In Versailles, even a letter is part of the game of power. And though your body feels the fatigue of the day, your mind knows there is still much more ahead. You finish signing the last letter and feel the weight of still wet ink between your fingers. The scribe bows silently before collecting the document, and you take a deep breath, letting the soft scent of paper and melted wax fill your senses for a brief moment. But there's no time to rest. Soon you're led to another room more discreet, where your closest advisors are already waiting. It's time for the Royal Council meeting. The room is lit by tall candles that cast dancing. Shadows on the walls lined with ancient books and detailed maps. The air carries the light perfume of herbs used to scent the fabrics, and the almost imperceptible smell of leather from the upholstered chairs. At its center stands a long table, already prepared with documents, quills, and a silver tray holding your cup of warm tea. You sit at the head of the table, as always, and everyone waits in silence until you give the signal to begin. A page brings you a cup of hot tea made with orange blossom imported from Italy, placing it beside you with care. You take a small sip, feeling the warm liquid slide down your throat, and then lift your eyes. Colbert begins with the numbers. Reports on taxes, spending on palace construction, and the situation of French colonies in the New World. He speaks clearly but cautiously, knowing that every word can be interpreted as criticism or suggestion. You listen carefully, interrupting only when necessary to question or approve. Here's a historical curiosity. Louis XIV was known for his ability to maintain absolute control over political decisions, even during complex discussions. They say He had a photographic memory for details and rarely needed to consult documents during these meetings. In addition, he often used delicate fans to hide expressions that might reveal his true intentions, a subtle way to keep his advisors constantly alert. Historians still debate whether the king truly made all the decisions alone or if he delegated some to trusted ministers. There are records suggesting that although he participated actively in the discussions, he often allowed Colbert and Louvois to handle minor administrative matters as long as they maintained the image that everything was decided by his sovereign will. As Louvois presents a report on military movements along the border with Holland, you notice something in his expressions, or perhaps hesitation, perhaps an attempt to hide concern. You interrupt him with a direct question. "And the troops in Lille, are they ready?" He responds firmly, but you sense that the answer isn't as clear as he'd like it to seem. That doesn't go unnoticed. You make a slight hand gesture indicating you're aware of the incomplete answer and turn your attention to the next topic. The next subject is diplomatic, relations with Spain, and possible marriage alliances. Madame de Maintenon intervened discreetly, suggesting a union between members of the two royal families as a way to seal a lasting peace. You listen attentively, making mental notes while the discussion continues calmly, yet with underlying tension. Each decision here has real impact, but also symbolic meaning. Each chosen word is part of a larger game, where even silence can be interpreted as consent or disapproval. When the meeting finally ends, you slowly rise, feeling the weight of the entire day on your shoulders. The advisors bow, and you dismiss them with a light nod. The room gradually empties, and for a moment you're alone, surrounded only by the quiet crackle of the candles. Another political ceremony completed, another step in the game of power. And though your body is tired, your mind knows the day is not over yet. You leave the council meeting with your mind still full of numbers, strategies, and unspoken promises. Your body asks for a moment of pause, but in Versailles, even rest is part of the spectacle. And today, like almost every day, there's a special activity planned, a royal hunt. Hunting was more than simple leisure for Louis XIV. It was a demonstration of strength, control, and absolute power over nature. It was also a social event where alliances were reinforced, rivals were observed, and hierarchies were maintained even among trees and muddy trails. Today, you will take part in one of these expeditions, surrounded by nobles, forest guards, and servants ready to ensure everything goes perfectly. You walk through the main courtyard of the palace, where the horses are already saddled and waiting. The sky is partly cloudy, and the morning air still carries the freshness of the night before. The sun begins to rise slowly, lighting up the palace grounds with soft rays that reflect off the polished armor of the guards and the colorful feathers on the nobles' hats. A page quickly approaches, bringing your gold-trimmed cape and riding crop. You put it on calmly, feeling the heavy fabric settle over your shoulders. Another servant holds the reins of your horse while you mount with elegance. It's a movement you've mastered since childhood, quick, firm, flawless. The procession forms around you, and soon the group begins to move, leaving behind the golden walls of Versailles and entering the carefully maintained woods surrounding the palace. The wheels of the servants' carts follow behind, carrying equipment, food, and even folding chairs for when it's time to take a refined break. Here's a little-known historical curiosity. Louis XIV loved to hunt, but he wasn't always the one who made the final strike. There were moments when a chosen noble had the honor of killing the prey in front of everyone, as a way of showing gratitude and loyalty to the king. This was seen as a great political favor, and many fought for this privilege, sometimes literally. Historians still debate whether the royal hunts were true hunting expeditions or simply symbolic events with animals deliberately released into specific areas to guarantee a dramatic outcome. There is evidence that on certain occasions, deer and boars were intentionally set loose in strategic spots to make the chase easier and create more exciting scenes for the spectators. As you ride along the narrow path between tall trees, you hear the sound of dogs sniffing the ground, barking with excitement. The forest guards lead the group, pointing out the correct route and warning about possible obstacles. Occasionally, you hear the rustling of dry leaves or the distant gallop of a startled animal. The tension rises. When you finally spot the first deer, the whole group stops in silence. You raise your arm slightly and the hunters pause, waiting for your signal. The animal hesitates, looking in your direction, before darting off in a fast sprint between the trees. Immediately, the dogs give chase, and the hunt truly begins. You urge your horse forward, feeling the wind against your face as you follow. The trail. The world seems to speed up. Trees blur past. The sound of hooves echoes through the forest, and your heart beats hard inside your chest. This is one of the few times you can feel something close to freedom, even though you're surrounded by hundreds of watching eyes. After several minutes of pursuit, the deer is caught. It tries to run, but the dogs surround it, and one of the most skilled nobles throws his spear with precision. The blow is clean, and the animal falls with tragic grace. There are quiet applause, murmurs of approval, and a brief moment of respect before preparations begin for the trophy. You dismount and approach, looking at the fallen deer. A page offers a towel to wipe the sweat from your forehead, and another brings fresh water in a silver goblet. You take a slow sip, feeling the cool liquid slide down your throat. The day has only just begun, but you already know this was only the first act of today's journey. The sun begins to slowly sink into the sky, painting the horizon in shades of gold and purple. The hunt is over, and the animals have been taken down and are already being prepared for the royal dinner. You return to Versailles, mounted on your horse, surrounded by your entourage, still formal, still watchful. As you enter the palace, you are greeted by servants ready to help you dismount and remove your hunting clothes, replacing them with more refined attire for dinner. The scent of the main hall already reaches you before you arrive, a mix of hot wax, freshly cut flowers, and spices imported from the West Indies. It's time for the most important ceremony of the late afternoon, the royal dinner. You walk through the golden corridor to the dining hall. The table is richly decorated with golden cutlery, crystal glasses, and silver-threaded napkins. Tall candles cast dancing shadows on the walls covered in tapestries, and musicians play soft violin melodies in the background, creating an atmosphere of contained elegance. Just as at lunch, there is no random seating at this table. Each position has been carefully chosen, revealing hierarchies and political alliances. Among today's guests are members of the royal family, close ministers, and a few nobles whose favor you wish to measure. Some of those present are old acquaintances. Others seem new to court, trying to gain space among the privileged. A widely known historical fact, Louis XIV ate alone, or almost. Although always surrounded by hundreds of people during his meals, he only shared the table with a small, selected group. This was such a great privilege that many nobles spent years trying to secure a seat there, spending fortunes and doing political favors just for the chance. Tonight's menu is particularly elaborate. The dishes are served in a specific order, following a symbolic ritual that refers to the 4 elements of nature and the 4 seasons of the year. It begins with a light appetizer, a fine soup made with chicken broth and aromatic herbs, accompanied by freshly baked bread lightly spread with clarified butter. Then come the main courses: roasted meats seasoned with expensive spices, delicate sauces made with real vinegar, and vegetables grown in the palace gardens. Here's a curious eccentricity of the era. Certain foods were considered for the king only. One of these was pâté de foie gras, a delicacy so exclusive that its consumption was forbidden to anyone outside the royal family. In addition, some dishes were served in a specific order, following a symbolic pattern. Appetizers represented humility, main courses demonstrated power, and desserts were seen as a reward for enduring formality until that point. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV actually ate as much as the records suggest, or if much of the food was discreetly removed untouched after the ceremony. There is evidence that many dishes were quietly taken to other parts of the palace after being presented, especially the most expensive ones, such as exotic fruits from the West Indies. Some say the king preferred repeating popular dishes, while others believe he used dinner as a way to test the loyalty of his guests. Whoever praised the food too much was probably trying to gain political points. As you cut into the main course, today, a venison fillet cooked in red wine with local herbs, you notice that even the way you hold your fork is observed. Your gestures are studied, your expressions analyzed. A slight nod may mean approval, a tired sigh, dissatisfaction. Nothing is casual. During dinner, polite conversations fill the air. Topics range from politics and art to literature and even discreet gossip about the day's events. You listen carefully, interrupt when necessary, and respond with brief comments that clearly show your position without sounding overly authoritarian. When dessert arrives, an almond pudding with wild honey, served with a glass of sweet wine, the atmosphere seems to relax slightly. Voices grow softer, smiles more frequent. It's a rare moment of calm in the constant spectacle of royal life. But you know it doesn't last long. Soon, another ceremony will follow, another routine, another step in the game of power that defines every second of your day. And so, between slow bites, evaluating looks, and subtle conversations, the royal dinner continues, another stage. Completed, another proof that even eating can be a demonstration of absolute control. Dinner is over, and the last traces of the scent of real vinegar and wild honey still linger in the air. You rise from the table with the elegance that defines you, feeling the weight of your clothes and the fatigue of the day beginning to settle on your shoulders. But there's no time for rest. In Versailles, even at night, the king has duties to fulfill. You walk through the golden corridor to a smaller, more intimate hall, yet still richly decorated. Venetian mirrors reflect the light of candles, and the tapestries on the walls tell ancient stories of conquests and alliances. This is the music and evening games hall, where the court gathers to entertain the king with refined performances and strategic matches. A historical curiosity. Louis XIV was known for his passion for the arts, especially music. He strongly supported composers like Jean-Baptiste Lully and helped establish the Académie Royale de Musique, one of the first French musical theaters. They say he loved hearing pieces composed specifically for him, and that he sometimes demanded certain melodies be repeated simply because he enjoyed the sound. Historians still debate whether these nights were truly moments of leisure or simply another way to maintain control over the court. Some suggest Louis XIV used these occasions to observe who stood out artistically or socially, while others believe he genuinely enjoyed the performances and games, seeing them as a deserved break from the relentless routine of absolute power. You sit in a richly decorated armchair, strategically positioned, so you can see both the performance and the guests present. A page adjusts your seat discreetly, ensuring comfort, while another offers a glass of lightly sweetened wine. You take a small sip, feeling the liquid smoothly slide down your throat. The musicians begin their performance. First, a soft opening of violins and harps, followed by clear voices singing in Latin. The music fills the hall like a gentle wave, wrapping everyone in a calm, controlled atmosphere. Each note seems to carry meaning, each pause deliberate. It's almost as if the very court breathed in sync with the rhythm of the melodies. As you listen, you notice the looks around you. Some nobles seem entertained, others discreetly bored. There are those who try to catch your attention with subtle smiles or polite gestures. You keep your expression neutral, but mentally note each movement, each interaction. Nothing goes unnoticed. When the final note echoes and fades into the air, there are quiet, polite claps. The master of ceremonies then announces the next part of the night, a game of piquet, a popular card game in the French court, known for its complex strategy. You nod slightly, and soon some of the closest guests approach to join. The cards are carefully dealt, and the game begins. You quickly recognize the familiar patterns, remembering the rules taught since childhood. Each round is a silent battle, where bluffs and smart moves reveal not only skill but personality. Some players are cautious, others more daring. You maintain control, deciding when to bet, when to retreat, and when to surprise. An especially interesting match arises between you and the Duke of Orleans, your direct cousin. He seems confident, but you notice a subtle hesitation in his choices. When you finally win with a precise move, he smiles discreetly, acknowledging victory with grace. You return the smile without showing too much emotion. The night continues, at a gentle pace. Other games are played, other songs performed. Quiet conversations fill the pauses, and occasional laughter escapes among those present. It's a rare moment of lightness in the constant spectacle of royal life. But you know it doesn't last forever. Soon, it will be time to prepare for sleep. And yes, even that moment will be surrounded by ritual and spectators. For now, though, you allow yourself to relax a little. Between musical notes, strategic plays, and evaluating glances, you let go. After all, even the Sun King deserves a quiet night, or something close to it. The music still softly echoes on the gilded walls of the hall, and the last quiet laughs of the court begin to fade. The night moves forward, and with it comes the final ceremony of the day, your preparation for sleep. In Versailles, even rest is not private. It's one last ritual of the day, as important as any other, where every gesture has its place and each person present has a specific role. You slowly rise from your chair, feeling the weight of your body after a full day of rituals, decisions, and performances. The hall begins to quietly empty, as guests, who were not chosen for the next stage, bow discreetly and take their leave. The musicians put away their instruments with care, and the servants prepare for the transition from leisure to rest. A page appears at your side, offering you his arm to guide you to the royal chambers. You accept with grace, walking through the candle-lit corridor where shadows dance across the tapestries. The palace seems to breathe more slowly now, as if even its walls knew the day was coming to an end. When you enter the royal bedroom, everything is already prepared. The thick curtains are drawn, protecting against the night chill, and the fire crackles gently in the fireplace, casting a soft warmth over the room. The bed, majestic and richly decorated, waits for you beneath a canopy embroidered with gold thread. Low candles are the only source of light, creating a calm and controlled atmosphere. The first step of the nightly routine is removing your clothes. A select group of servants and nobles positions themselves around you, ready to fulfill their roles. Each piece is removed with almost surgical precision. The heavy coat, the ornate vest, the delicately tied cravat. Even taking off the right sock is a political act, performed by someone whose official title includes that specific responsibility. Here's a little-known historical curiosity. Louis XIV maintained a nightly ritual just as elaborate as the morning one. There was an exclusive position called the premier valet de chambre, responsible for supervising all the details of the bedtime routine. This man was one of the few who had permission to see the king without clothes, something extremely rare and considered a great privilege. Historians still debate whether these nighttime rituals were kept only out of tradition, or if they also served as a form of constant control. Some suggest that Louis XIV used this moment to observe who showed the most dedication, who spoke the least, and who seemed most eager to be near him. Others argue that, although he was always surrounded, there were certain moments during the night when he could feel some slight ease, even if minimal. As you finish changing, you slip into a nightshirt made of fine linen warmed near the fire. You notice the soft scent of clean laundry mixed with the perfume of the essences used in the morning baths. It's a familiar, comforting smell, almost like a signal that finally, the day can come to an end. The Grand Chamberlain approaches, with a goblet of warm wine seasoned with cinnamon and honey, an old recipe said to guarantee peaceful sleep. You take a small sip, feeling the liquid slide down your throat with gentleness before handing the cup back with a light gesture. It's time to get ready to lie down. You walk to the bed and, with calm movements, sit at the edge. A servant discreetly adjusts the pillows, while another pulls back the covers so you can settle in comfortably. When you lie down, you feel the coolness of the silk sheets against your skin, contrasting with the warmth of your tired body. The great chamberlain draws near and extinguishes the farthest candle, plunging the room into deeper shadow. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling silence begin to take over the space. But not completely. There's always a servant positioned near the door, ready to wake at the slightest movement. And so, even in rest, you remain the center of the universe. The silence of the royal bedroom begins to deepen, as if the very palace were slowing down to match the end of your day. The last candle was extinguished minutes ago, and now only the faint glow of the fireplace still bathes the room in dancing shadows. The crackling of the fire mixes with the distant sound of wind outside, gently tapping against the thick palace windows. You are lying on cool silk sheets, feeling the soft touch of fresh linen against your tired skin. Your body finally relaxes, as if it had just been given permission to let go of the weight of so many studied gestures, evaluating looks, and carefully chosen words. Today was another day in the role of Louis XIV, the Sun King, the center of the French universe, the man who could never seem too human. But now, even surrounded by silent servants positioned in the shadows and the constant movement of timekeepers, marking every second, you allow yourself to breathe more slowly. Outside, the world sleeps beneath a sky scattered with stars. The gardens of Versailles, usually so full of life and motion, are quiet, lit only by the moon reflecting off still. Fountains. The hundreds of people who revolve around your existence also rest. Some in the far corners of the palace, others in servant quarters or barracks, all knowing that tomorrow it will all begin again. More ceremonies, more protocols, more games of power disguised as routine. Inside this room, though, everything feels smaller, calmer. Even control can feel distant for a moment. You turn your face slightly, feeling the soft pillow mold to your head. Your eyes grow heavy, and your mind, once filled with decisions and strategies, now seems to drift without hurry. Historians still debate whether Louis XIV ever truly found any real moment of peace amid all this formality. Some suggest he used the night as a space for reflection, away from public eyes. Others believe that even in his most private thoughts, he carried the weight of being not just a king, but the symbol of an entire country. But perhaps that doesn't matter right now. Perhaps for just a brief moment, it's enough to know who you are, that you lived an entire day being observed, judged, imitated, and respected. And that, even surrounded by so many eyes, even under the weight of such a great title, you can still close yours and feel the silence take over. The sounds of the palace fade, one by one. The creak of a distant door, the soft step of a servant, adjusting something in the corridor, the rustle of curtains swayed by a light breeze. One by one, they disappear, giving way to a deep, almost magical quiet. And then, as if time itself decided to slow completely, you feel sleep beginning to arrive. Slowly, like a wave kissing the shore before retreating. No rush, no obligations, just this moment here, now. Good night, Majesty.